Hi everyone and welcome for this brand new video about how to paint your Heroquest box. So today we are going to use the Orcs model and the Goblin model to show you how to paint it in three different ways. The first one will be very quick because it's going to use some speed paint. The second one, on the base of the speed paint, we are going to push our highlight on all the different elements, and the third part will be about, on the base of the speed paint, some airbrush, and to finish, some brush to have something very quick, very efficient, and in best quality we can. I really hope you enjoy this kind of tutorial. Don't hesitate to subscribe and like the channel, and comment if you have any kind of question or just to support me. You can always come on Patreon and have some special video about dilution and a lot of different things, and you can share with me your paint. Thanks again, and let's go for the paint. So I'm going to start these orcs. I primed all in white. I'm going to use the different speed paints for the skin of the orcs. For the non-metallic metal, I'm going to use the Gravelord Grey, and for the different leather, I'm going to use this one. Remember to don't use brush too much clean, because it's going to the paint is going to go in the down of the hair of your brush and to damage it. So you need to find a brush who are already used, so don't too much new, and a part enough good to be sure to reach the different surfaces you want in the best way, because it's always complicated to make your retouch after applying this kind of paint. So when I put all my different skin parts, I come back with some Gravelord Grey, and I'm going to apply on all the metallic part. Don't worry if you forget some parts in green, you can always come back later to apply your green skin. Remember, if you have too much paint on some surfaces, you can come back with your brush, and the hair of your brush is going to absorb some parts of your paint, and that will be pretty helpful. So now I'm going to apply the last color, the hardened leather, on all the last different parts. I'm going to make it on all the different leather and on the clothes, so that will be really more easy and efficient to have only 3 colors on one orcs. So it's always the same things. We are going to apply that, and step by step all the 3 different colors will be done. And after that, we are going to apply some black coat on all the base, just to have nice results, easy and ready to play. After, I'm going to show you the different results on the orcs, on a simple goblin, and we are going to continue and trying to evolve and have a better result. So we are going to start the goblin in the same way with some orc skins, and we are going to apply the same kind of color, and we can always apply more highlights if you want some distinction with the Orcs skin basic from the box. When I paint, you can see that sometimes I apply, even if there are some few little things who are going to be in other colors, but to have a great result with this kind of color you need to have some large surfaces, so I can always later, when I finish the work on the flesh, come back on the few details to make a clear distinction between the different elements. For example, if I have some non-metallic metal on the face, I can come back and put just some few black after and highlight with white to create my distinction. But during the process, for the moment, I just need to have very global color everywhere to have something with color and ready to play. So I continue for the non-metal metallic with the Gravelord Grey on all the metallic surfaces, and there are really a few parts of metallic, so it's going to be great to make a clear distinction between the Goblin and the Orcs. By the way, they are a different size, so the different model have different size, so that's already have a clear distinction, but that's always helpful during a game to have clear distinction between the different models. I'm going to continue with the hardened laser for all the different and last part. As I already explained, I'm going to apply just some black coat on the base to have something ready to play. So remember to don't push any kind of varnish on your miniatures if you want to apply and continue to paint it later, because if you do that, the paint will not be easy to apply on your mini. So as you can see, it's already it's ready to play. So that's just with some few base on the different color, and we are going to see how to improve this level. That's take me right now for all these miniatures 3 hours, and you can always make it quickly just by being 2 or 3 friends to paint in the same time. So we are going to see how to increase this level by pushing a little bit more highlight on the skin, the Orcs, and on the non-metallic metal part. So we are going to start by highlight every element, and after to pushing our shadow just to have a better visibility. So I start with some mood green, and I'm not going to dilute a lot this mood green just because I want it to be directly tap to have a very strong highlight on some few surfaces. I'm going to try to reach, but not necessarily the parts who take the more shadow, and only the part who are going to take the less shadow. So I'm going to don't reach the part where the ink I previously put is gone, so I can preserve my very strong shadow and have very more lightful highlight. So after this first highlight, I'm going to apply a first shadow step by using some dark green I use from Prince August Games, but you can use from Games Workshop, that's work too. So if you use some Games Workshop paint, don't hesitate to dilute more because it's going to be more covering, and we need to have some layer who are going to be more and more strong depending on how many time we are going to put this layer. If I push it just one time, it's going to be strong, but not so much, so we can always see the previous step. And if you put 2 or 3 times the same layer, so it's going to be totally covering, and you will not see the previous step. What we want to see, it's to see always the previous step in our way, to have nice transition. Now I'm going to push my highlight by using a mix between my snot green, my mood green, sorry, and a little bit of white, just to have my last point of highlight. Remember to focus and to just tap some few points of white of your mix, sorry, on some few points. Don't take too much time and don't have too much large surfaces when you put your white, because if you do that, you are going to have something really white and not necessarily green. So once again, remember to focus and to reach a smaller and smaller surfaces to have a great result. So it's done for the skin, and now we are going to continue with our non-metallic metal, and we are going to dilute directly some few white to push it in the right direction, and the paint needs to stay in the direction we are going to push. So the dilution is good. And now we are going to continue by pushing every edges with some few white to create a nice non-metallic metal, so very strong contrast. Remember to pushing your highlight on every edges, even if some edges like this one, we are going to be in the middle of the sword, is going to be a little bit more complicated to reach, but it's really important to have very nice contrast on that side. You can always focus all your highlights on the up of the miniatures and don't necessarily reach all the back side. So in that way, people who are going to play with your minis is going to take a look more on the up side than the down side, and you are going to gain more time into this process. So don't hesitate to try the white pro color, because it's a very good white. It's really easy to dilute it, and there are a lot of pigment inside, so it's always a pleasure to make this kind of treatment. Don't hesitate to tell us in the comments if from your side you use some white and you really like it, so we can know that, and that can cool to share with us your experience. So I come back with some matte black from Army Painter, and I push my shadow to be sure this shadow is going to be more strong everywhere. By the way, I use the black to create my lining between my different elements, even if it's between skin and leather, or between leather and non-metallic metal. That's always welcome. This type of black is really useful on this kind of miniatures, because even if it's for game, you can see that lining of black is going to give really more visibility on the large direction. Remember to push a lot of black, by the way, on your non-metallic metal color, so that's going to create for you the strong contrasts we need to create the illusion of metallic on display. Remember to reach smaller and smaller surfaces during the different step, because it's going to be very more important. More we are going to continue and try to finish, and more we need to focus on some few points to always preserve our previous step. So we are going to now apply two different steps on our laser part. So with my flat earth from Prince August, I come back on the intermediate surfaces, so not the very strong highlight part and not necessarily the very strong shadow, but just into the intermediate surfaces. And after that, we are going to come back with this mix with a little bit of white to pushing our different edges to create our transition and to create our contrast. As you can see, I don't take a lot of time to do that because I don't necessarily need to focus attention on these parts. They're just some neutral parts. I just want to make it easily and more easy to see when you take a look to the minis, but not necessarily very strong highlight, just a few so people can see it, but just around they see the skin and the non-metallic metal. So I focus a lot on the edges. So let's start for the goblins. This time we are going to use the same kind of methods. The only changes will be about we are going to use a few metallics, a few non-metallics metal on the minis, so we can use all the time. We don't need to use on the metallics to have some different kind of effect on some few parts of the skin. But I'm going to show you that, and the first step is to use the moot green in the same way than on the Orcs model. So I push my highlight on every edges and try to preserve the more shadow part to be sure the shadow, the previous ink will be preserved. So I come back on the skin, and this time I'm going to make a second highlight by adding a little bit of white into my mix and try to reach a smaller surfaces to be sure to have nice transition between the two different highlights. Now I'm going to use the white to pushing my highlight on all the non-metallic metal. As you can see, I focus a lot on the edges to create my very strong contrasts who will be very necessary when I do non-metallic metal. Don't hesitate to make multiple layer of white to have a very strong white and strong highlight. You need to dilute, as you can see, to have something not necessarily very strong, but easy to push in the direction you want. So during the process I use the white, by the way, to pushing a little bit more my highlights on the skin, because I want for the goblin skin a little bit more lightful. So I remove one step of shadow on the skin of my goblin, and I put one more step of highlight. Take care to just tap this few point of white, because if you use it too much, you are going to see your green is going to be very not so strong. Now with some black I'm going to pushing more shadow into my NMM and use this black to do some lining between my different surfaces. So first I push my shadow into my non-metallic metal to have very strong contrast, and after I will do my lining on every different surfaces to have a better legibility. So I come back with some few flat earths and a point of white and pushing my highlight on every leather part. And now I come back with some matte brown from Pantsugus, just to pushing a little bit more of my shadow and on the leather, and finish this piece. So here is the results after 1/2 hour on each miniatures in all time, from speed paint to highlight with my green and white and everything else. I just choose to paint only 2 because I'm going to paint all the other one directly with some step with airbrush and brush to be more efficient into my different step. So now I'm going to show you the third step, so the best way to paint in the most effective way, so with airbrush first and with brush after. I'm going to show you all the airbrush step on the 2 miniatures in the same time, just because when we use airbrush we don't need a lot of paint into, and that will be more easily for me to paint on different model in the same time. You can make it on 2 models or more if you prefer. That can work pretty well. So this first step is going to push my more strong shadow, and by the way I'm going to push it on all the down of the miniatures, because we don't necessarily need our eyes to focus on the back, the down part of the miniatures, but more on the up part of the miniatures. Remember, it's always better to see the arm of an orc in front of you than the leg. So we are going to make the same on the goblins, but this time we are going again to push the attention on the up of the miniatures by pushing more black color on all the down part. So now we are going to push our highlight with white, just to have more strong contrasts on our non-metallic metal paint. And I'm going to do the same on my goblin. After, we are going to do the same kind of effect, but on the skin and on the leather. So I'm going to come back with some canopy green to pushing my highlights on all the skin part. I use a very lightful green just because I really want something very strong to make a distinction between the different elements. I clean my airbrush, and after I'm going to come back and make the same, but this time for the leather, by using some Flesh 2 from Pro Color. Now we are going to come back with some white and black, and pushing our shadow and our more highlight on every part. So that's going to be very useful to use the black at beginning to pushing our different very strong shadow and contrasts, and that's going to be very helpful to create some lining between our different elements to gain a more better legibility. That's exactly the same way we do in the previous step when we make highlight directly on Army Painter speed paint. But in that case, by using airbrush, we already push all our global and shadow and light. And that's making a huge difference in my opinion, because a lot of work is already done, so we just have to put and exaggerate and make it more and more contrasted. Remember to use a lot the side of your brush and try to use the sculpture to give some direction to your brush directly by putting the point and the end of your brush in the direction you want to have the more color and the more strong color. That will be very, very helpful. So now we are going to do the same but in white, and pushing our highlight is going to give more life to our miniatures. And by the way, we are going to push, for example, more white into the face, for example on the eyes, on the teeth, to have something once again more with more visibility. So remember, we have to work after on the flesh again and on some few parts of the leather, to pushing once again a little bit more our highlights and have a very nice miniatures for our board game. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel, and don't hesitate to ask or say hello in the comments, so that will be pretty helpful for my referencement. Remember that I do a lot of live and I focus on Twitch for all my life, so don't hesitate, by the way, to come and follow me on Twitch. I come back on the skin this time with the mood green from Games Workshop, and I'm going to tap this highlight on some surfaces. We are going to take the more light. Take care to tap your color and to have something very, very strong on some few points. By the way, if you think your transition is not enough good, you can always come back later with a middle color to create better transition. But for the moment, focus on pushing very strong highlight. And after, just by adding a little bit of white into my mood green, I come back and create once again one more very, very thin highlight. Remember to step by step reduce the surface you are going to reach, so your transition will be better. We can always focus on the up of the miniatures to push the eyes to see in the direction we want. So this step is not necessary, but if you want to increase the level of your transition, you can always come back with a warp stone glow from Games Workshop and pushing this just into the shadow to create more transition. Remember to preserve your point of light. So we come back with a mix between Flesh 2 from Procolor and a little bit of white to pushing our highlight on the leather. I just come back with some few brown matte just to have some effects into my non-metallic metal and have a clear distinction between the Orc and the different other model from Heroquests. So we are going to now start the Goblin, and for that we are going to use some mood green and mixing with some white for the first highlight, because we try on the Goblin to have a more highlights and more clear flesh skin, if you prefer. By the way, if you want to have exactly the same kind of color of skin for your Goblin and your Orcs, that's always possible. You just have to follow the previous step I show you for the Orcs. I come back with some white for my last and final highlight on the flesh of my Goblin, because I want something more lightful than the Orc flesh. The surface is really more thin on the Goblin because it's really more small miniatures. So remember to just tap to have a good intensity into your color. So now I come back with some few white, but this time I'm going to use this white to pushing my highlight on all the non-metallic metal part. So now with a mix between white and Flesh 2 from Procolor, I come back and pushing some highlight on every edges of the different leather part. And now to finish with some few black, I'm going to push into the recesses and to create some clear distinction between my different elements, like the shoulder and the arm and the different leather and the skin. So here is the result after the airbrush and brush sets on the speed paint paint. So that's pretty easy because the airbrush is pretty helpful to push all the global highlights and shadow. So don't hesitate to use it if you can. That's going to increase a lot the quality and the quantity of miniatures you can paint. So right now, just in front of the camera, you can see the speed paint results. After that, you will see the mix between speed paint and after brush results. And after that, you can see the result after speed paint, airbrush, and to finish some brush to have this kind of result. I really hope you enjoy this kind of tutorial, and we are continue the Heroquest challenge and the Heroquest project for the next step during this month. Thanks again for watching. I really hope you enjoy this Heroquest project. Don't hesitate to like, subscribe and comment to give me your support. See you next time for the next tutorial. Bye bye.